My daughter reached for the bread basket and accidentally nudged her glass. Just a nudge. It didn't even spill. But my sister-in-law's eyes cut over to Violet like she'd thrown it across the room. It was a look I had learned to read in 2 years of Christmas Eves and Easters and Sunday dinners. A look that said, "See what I mean?" That said, "This child has no discipline." It compressed everything she usually saved for words into one quick flicker of her eyes toward my mother. My mother caught the look. She smiled apologetically, the way she always did. I watched that exchange and I thought, tonight. My name isn't important yet. What matters is this: I'm 31 years old. I have a daughter named Violet who is 10, and who reads fantasy novels and collects rocks, and once spent 45 minutes explaining to me the different kinds of igneous rock formations. And I didn't understand half of it, but I loved every word. 2 years ago, my marriage ended. My ex-husband didn't leave in a blaze of dramatic confrontation. He just slowly stopped choosing us, and then one day he chose someone else instead. We split the house equity. I took an apartment nearby. We worked out a custody schedule that neither of us loves, and I went back to the life I had been quietly building on the side while everything else fell apart. I'm a CPA. I made partner at my firm 3 years ago, right before the marriage ended. I manage a book of small business clients. I am very good at my job. I always have been. But none of that mattered to my sister-in-law. To her, I was just my brother's sad, divorced sister who drove a sensible car and brought a vegetable dish to every family-out dinner because she probably couldn't afford a real contribution. That was a real thing, she said, out loud, at Easter. My mother laughed like it was a joke. My brother Holt has been married to her for 6 years. He is a good person in the way that some good people are good. Kind when it costs nothing, absent when it costs something. He runs a small landscaping business. He loves her in the way people love things that dazzle them. He comes to family dinners and laughs at her jokes, and sometimes, when she says something that lands wrong, he finds something very interesting to look at on the table. My parents adore her. She brings expensive candles to dinner. She compliments my mother's cooking with the specificity of a restaurant critic. She volunteers at the school and drives a white Tesla that she parks in my parents' driveway so everyone on the block can see it. She has one daughter, Piper, who is 13 and who takes figure skating and French lessons, and is, according to my mother, thriving. And me? I drive a 2019 Civic I paid cash for. I live in a 2-bedroom condo I also own outright. Bought it 18 months ago with the divorce settlement plus savings. No mortgage, no debt. I wear simple clothes. I don't talk about money at family dinners. So for 2 years, my family decided I was struggling. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why did you keep going? Why keep sitting at that table, and worse, why keep bringing Violet to it? The honest answer is that Violet asked me to. The first Christmas after the divorce, she sat on the edge of my bed while I was getting ready and said, "Mom, are we still going to Grandma's?" And the way she asked it, like she was scared I might say no, like she was holding her breath. I couldn't do it. She had already lost the shape of her family. I wasn't going to take Thanksgiving and Christmas too. So I went, and every time my sister-in-law said something pointed, I told myself, this is for Violet. She needs her grandparents. She needs to feel like she still has a whole family. I was wrong to wait as long as I did. I understand that now. If I had recognized earlier that Violet wasn't gaining a family at those dinners but learning to make herself invisible, I would have left sooner. But grief does strange things to judgment. Not grief for a person, but grief for the life you thought you were going to have. It makes you hold on to the pieces that remain, even when they cut you. This Christmas Eve felt different from the moment we walked in. I felt it in the air, a particular charge that told me she had already decided how the evening was going to go. She had already cast everyone. My brother as the supportive husband, Piper as the accomplished daughter, my parents as the adoring audience, and me as the cautionary tale. She greeted Violet with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "You've gotten so tall in the tone you use for children you feel sorry for." The table was beautiful. My mother had made a standing rib roast, something she reserved for Christmas. Violet had dressed up, burgundy dress from Target, hair in a braid she'd done herself, and she looked exactly like what she was, a happy kid trying to have a nice holiday. That was before the bread basket. After the nudge and the look and my mother's quick apologetic smile, dinner settled into its familiar choreography. My sister-in-law talked about the renovation on their master bath. She talked about Piper's figure skating, how Piper had placed second at regionals and would have placed first if the judging hadn't been questionable. She talked about a trip to Costa Rica. She made it all sound effortless. Then the conversation shifted, the way it always did, from her accomplishments to Violet. "So, Violet," she said, setting down her fork, "how's school? Still in the regular reading group, or did they move you up?" Violet looked up. "I'm in the advanced group. I just finished a 400-page book on my own." "Oh, that's sweet," my sister-in-law said in a voice that made it sound like the opposite of sweet. "Piper finished the whole Harry Potter series at 9, but every child develops differently." "She's on the honor roll," I said. My brother nodded. "That's great, Vi." My sister-in-law smiled at him, then back at the table. "Of course! It's wonderful she has something to focus on." She picked up her wine glass. "I do wonder sometimes if she gets enough social time, though. She always seems a little withdrawn at these dinners." "She's fine," I said. I know. I'm not criticizing." She glanced at my parents. "I was actually talking to my therapist last week. She mentioned that children going through family disruption sometimes internalize it in ways that aren't obvious right away. They become quiet. They pull back. It can be easy to miss if you're not looking for it." A pause, and then, "I'm not diagnosing her. I'm just saying a girl does better with stability. 2 parents, a consistent home life." She looked at Violet, held her gaze long enough that Violet noticed. "It just makes such a difference in how they develop." The table went quiet. My mother nodded slowly. "Tammy's just saying what we've all been a little worried about." My father refilled his water glass and said nothing. I looked at Violet. Her hands were in her lap. She was staring at her plate. Her jaw was set in the tight, careful way that 10-year-old jaws get when they are working very hard not to show they are hurt. She had heard every word. That was the moment. The one I had been carrying for 2 years, compressed and stored at the bottom of every dinner and holiday. An apologetic smile my mother had given her instead of me. My daughter, at my parents' table, being told she was less than because her parents' marriage didn't survive. I placed my napkin next to my plate. "Excuse me," I said. "I left something in my bag." My sister-in-law laughed. Light dismissive. "Going to regroup? We haven't even had dessert." I didn't answer. I got up. I walked to the hallway where I'd left my work bag by the door. My hands weren't shaking. I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years of these dinners, completely still. I reached in and took out my work iPad. I'd brought it because I had a client report due on the 27th and planned to review it on the drive home. But earlier, sitting in my parents' driveway before I walked up to the door, I had opened a different folder. The one I had only looked at once before, alone in my office 6 months ago, the night I understood exactly what I was dealing with. 6 months ago, my firm had taken on a new small business client, my brother's landscaping company. He was referred by a colleague, came in for a consultation, signed the engagement letter. He worked primarily with one of my junior associates. He did not realize, when he signed the paperwork, that the managing partner of the LLC he had hired was me. I don't advertise my name prominently in client intake materials. He never thought to look. I am his accountant. I have seen everything. I walked back into the dining room and stood at the end of the table. I didn't sit. I set the iPad face down in front of me. "I want to finish the conversation," I said, "about stability and 2-parent households and what Violet needs." My sister-in-law raised an eyebrow. "There's nothing to finish. I was sharing a concern." "I know," I said. "So let me share some information that might be useful." I turned the iPad over. I opened the file. I slid it across the table. She looked at it the way people look at things they're not sure they want to touch. Then she picked it up. She frowned. She read more carefully. And then her face did the thing I had been waiting 2 years to see. The color left it, just drained like water out of a tub. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "Read it," I said. "This is private." Her voice had a crack in it now. "This is our Holt." My brother looked up from his plate. "What?" She handed it to him. He took it. He looked at the top of the screen and went completely still. "It's your business tax file," I said to the table. "Your return from last year and the preliminary for this year. I'm the managing partner at the accounting firm you hired 6 months ago, Holt. You signed an engagement letter with my LLC. I've been your CPA this whole time." No one spoke. "Your landscaping business," I continued, "netted $43,000 last year. That's after revenue, equipment, fuel, labor, insurance, and your salary draw. $43,000 for a family of 3. That's not, my brother started. The IRS issued a deficiency notice in October, I said. You owe $26,800 in back taxes, interest, and penalties from the past 2 years. There's a lien on the business. My associate submitted a payment plan request on your behalf. I approved it. I gave you the best terms available, because you're my brother. I didn't say a word to anyone. My mother had set down her fork. The Tesla, I said, looking at my sister-in-law now. It's leased. You're 2 months behind. The dealership sent a cure notice. You have until January 8th to bring the account current, or they begin recovery proceedings. That is none of your business, she said. Her voice had dropped to something between quiet and desperate. You made my daughter your business tonight, I said. You sat at this table and told a 10-year-old child that she's developmentally compromised because her family isn't the shape you approve of. So yes, I think everything at this table is fair. I looked at my parents. Really looked at them. At my mother, who had nodded when my daughter was called damaged, and my father, who had refilled his water glass. You two have spent 2 years feeling sorry for me, I said. You slipped Violet money at the door and looked at my car with that look and asked me if I was keeping up okay. So let me tell you how I'm keeping up. I navigated to my own financial dashboard. I held the screen out for them to see. I made partner 3 years ago. My base salary is $165,000 a year. I have equity in the firm. My brokerage account holds just under $200,000. Violet's college fund has $47,000 in it. And my condo, the place you two have been calling my little apartment, I own it outright. No mortgage. I paid $291,000 in cash 18 months ago. My father stared at the screen like it was in a language he almost recognized. But you never said anything, my mother said. I tried, I said. 2 years ago, when I made partner, I came to Sunday dinner with a bottle of champagne. I started to tell you, and the conversation moved on to Piper's skating competition, and 20 minutes later, everyone had forgotten I'd had something to say. I put the bottle back in my bag and drove home. After that, I stopped trying, because you stopped asking. My mother looked at her plate. I stopped telling you things, I said, because you stopped listening. My sister-in-law had been regrouping. She sat up straighter now. Fine, you have money. That doesn't change what I said about Violet. Children from disrupted households statistically don't, I said. She kept going anyway. They struggle. I was stating a fact. I was trying to help. You were trying to feel tall, I said, and you used my daughter to do it. My brother was looking at the table. He had not said anything in a long time. Holt, I said. I looked at him directly. I love you, but you sat here every Sunday and let this happen. Every Easter, every Christmas. You heard what she said and you found something else to look at. That is on you. He didn't respond. I turned back to my sister-in-law. I could help you, I said. I know exactly how to restructure your IRS payment plan. I know the contact at the dealership who handles cure negotiations. I have done this for other clients. People I've never met. People who never once sat at a table and told me my daughter was broken. I could make some calls on Monday and buy you 6 months of breathing room. A sliver of something moved across her face. Not quite hope, but the shape of it. But I won't, I said, because Violet is watching me right now, and I am not going to teach her that you can say what you said tonight and then get rescued by the person you said it to. We are family, my mother said, her voice thin. Family, I said, doesn't diagnose a child at Christmas Eve dinner to make themselves feel better. If you walk out that door, my father said. And there it was, the threat he'd kept in his coat pocket my whole life, the one that was supposed to make me fold. Don't expect us to just pick up the phone like nothing happened. I looked at him. He had taught me to balance a checkbook. He had cried at the airport when I left for college, according to my mother. Somewhere between that person and this one, he had handed over his judgment to a woman who looked at his granddaughter like a variable to be accounted for. Dad, I said, I'm not waiting for a call. I'm done showing up to a table where Violet has to earn her seat. I went to the hallway and got my coat and Violet's coat and my bag. Violet appeared beside me without being called. She had already pushed her chair back. She was ready. We walked out together. December cold hit us on the porch. Dry air cold that settles in your chest. The neighborhood had Christmas lights up. Someone down the block had a fire going, and the smell of wood smoke drifted over in a way that should have felt festive and instead just felt clean. I stood on the porch step for one breath, then we walked to the Civic. I got in, Violet got in. I put the key in the ignition and sat there, both hands on the wheel. "Mom," Violet said. "Yeah." "Were you scared in there?" I thought about it honestly. A little, at the beginning, not at the end. She was quiet for a moment. The heater started to run. Outside, the porch light at my parents' house was still on. "How long did you know," she asked, "about Uncle Holt's taxes?" I turned to look at her. She was watching me with a calm, patient expression that still catches me off guard sometimes. This kid who classifies rocks and reads 400-page books and apparently processes information faster than I give her credit for. "6 months," I said. She nodded. "You were waiting." "I was hoping I wouldn't need it," I said. "I kept thinking they'd figure it out themselves, or that something would shift." She looked out the windshield. "It shifted tonight." "It did," I said. Silence. A car passed on the street, its headlights sweeping across the dashboard. "Mom," Violet said, "what she said about me, about needing 2 parents to be okay." "She was wrong," I said. "Completely and entirely wrong." "I know," she said, and her voice was steady in a way I hadn't expected. "I knew before you said anything, but it felt different when you said it out loud. In front of everyone." She paused. "It felt like it was really true when you said it." I reached over and took her hand. She squeezed back hard. "We're really not going back, are we?" she said. It wasn't quite a question. "I don't know what your grandparents will decide to do," I said. "Whether they'll reach out or not, that's their choice. But we are not going anywhere we're not genuinely wanted. And if we do go somewhere, it's because we want to be there. Not because we're trying to hold together a family that's already decided we don't belong." She thought about that. "Okay," she said finally. "That's fair." I pulled out of the driveway without looking back. We got Chinese food from the place near home. Violet's standing Christmas Eve order. Shrimp fried rice, spring rolls, wonton soup she drinks straight from the carton like tea. We ate at the coffee table with a nature documentary on, something about Arctic foxes that neither of us had seen before. We sat close on the couch. At some point, I went to the kitchen to refill my water, and I stood there a moment, just looking at the apartment. The bookshelves overfull with Violet's paper sacks and my tax manuals. The collection of rocks on the windowsill, each one labeled in her handwriting. The Christmas tree we had decorated together last weekend, slightly lopsided, too many ornaments crowded on the lower branches because she can't reach higher without a step stool, and refused to ask for help. My family had spent 2 years imagining this space as a consolation prize, a place I had landed when my life didn't go as planned. But the rocks labeled in purple marker, the lopsided tree, the sound of the documentary from the other room, none of this was a consolation. It was everything I had chosen, deliberately, with full understanding of what I was doing, a life built on what was actually real. I thought about my sister-in-law. Right now, she was probably still at my parents' table, the roast going cold, finding a way to reframe the evening so that she was the injured party. She was probably scared in a way she had never been scared before, and I felt something. Not guilt, not satisfaction, but something quieter. The feeling of having finally, after 2 years, just told the truth. I had not taken anything from her. I had only declined to keep covering it up. I went back to the couch. Violet had pulled a blanket over her lap. On the screen, an Arctic fox was running across a white field, small, quick, completely at home in the cold. "Mom," Violet said, not looking away from the screen. "Yeah." "Next year, can we just do Christmas Eve us, like us and whoever we actually want to see?" I thought about who that list might include. A colleague who was good at board games, a neighbor who always remembered what Violet was currently reading and brought her something in the same genre, small, real, chosen. "Yes," I said. She leaned into my side. The fox on screen had stopped running and sat perfectly still, watching something in the distance, patient, alert, unbothered by any of it. I turned off the lamp and left just the tree lights on, and the room went soft and gold. I had spent 2 years making myself smaller at my family's table so everyone else could feel comfortable. I had compressed myself so that Tammy could feel larger, so my parents could keep their version of peace, so Violet could have a grandmother and a grandfather and the shape of something whole. Maybe some of that waiting had given Violet something useful. Maybe she had learned, watching me, the difference between silence and surrender. But most of it was just time that was gone. I wasn't going to lose any more of it. Violet was asleep against my shoulder. Within 20 minutes, the soup carton still on the coffee table. The fox on screen kept moving steady across the white. I sat in the quiet and I let the evening settle. I did not feel like a person who had won something. I felt like a person who had finally stopped pretending to lose. That was more than enough.